Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dive headfirst into the massive, heavily mythologized life of America's 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. You know, beneath that legendary image of the folksy rail splitter, there's actually a calculating political genius, a leader who radically expanded executive power just to hold a fracturing nation together. We're going to uncover the real structures of his leadership during literally the most turbulent period in U.S. history. Okay, let's dive into this. A house divided against itself cannot stand. When Lincoln delivered this iconic quote back in 1858, he wasn't predicting the destruction of the nation, right? He was acknowledging an escapable reality. The United States was fracturing, and the fragile compromises of the past were completely dead. This immediately establishes the incredible dramatic stakes and the deeply divided nation he was about to inherit.
Section 1. Frontier Boy to Prairie Lawyer. To really understand his wartime leadership, we first need to look at his roots.
So, we all know the famous origin story, born in 1809 in a one-room log cabin in Kentucky. But what's truly incredible is his ruthless drive for self-improvement. He had less than 12 months of formal schooling. He completely bypassed the traditional elite pathways, working his way up from poverty by taking odd jobs as a postmaster and a county surveyor. He was such a voracious reader that he literally taught himself the law. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between his folksy image and his legal reality. His supporters loved pushing this frontier myth of an awkward rail splitter. But the real Lincoln, he was a brilliant, calculating attorney representing massive clients like the railroads. In one famous murder trial, he actually used a farmer's almanac to prove a witness couldn't possibly have seen the crime in the moonlight, completely destroying their credibility and winning an acquittal. Brilliant, right?
Section 2. A house divided. We're moving into the 1850s now, when the nation's fragile compromises on slavery began to completely unravel.
Lincoln's political rise was absolutely rapid and highly strategic. Angered by the Kansas-Nebraska Act's expansion of slavery in 1854, he quickly became a key voice against it. He gained massive national fame debating Stephen A. Douglas in 1858. And then, by February 1860, his deeply intellectual Cooper Union speech proved to East Coast elites that he was a serious national thinker. Boom! By November, he is elected the 16th President of the United States. 10. That is the exact number of Southern slave states where absolutely zero ballots were cast for Abraham Lincoln. None. His 1860 victory relied entirely on the North and the West. It is a stark, mathematical proof of extreme regional polarization and a nation already torn in half. Section 3. Commander-in-Chief. His presidency was immediately tested by secession and the outbreak of the American Civil War. The war immediately forced Lincoln to test the absolute limits of executive power. He unilaterally suspended the writ of habeas corpus. This was unprecedented, allowing the military to detain suspected Confederate sympathizers in select areas without formal charges or a trial. Chief Justice Roger Taney argued only Congress had this constitutional power, but Lincoln prioritized securing the Capitol and the Union's borders over traditional legal norms. But the stakes weren't just constitutional. They were deeply financial. The U.S. national debt skyrocketed to over $2 billion during the war. To put that into perspective for the time, that's an absolutely staggering sum. To fund this massive military effort, Lincoln and Congress had to innovate. They passed the first ever federal income tax and started issuing greenbacks, the first paper banknotes from the U.S. government since the Revolution. Out on the battlefield, Lincoln was endlessly frustrated by cautious commanders. Take General George B. McClellan. He was notoriously slow, spending months just planning. But Lincoln finally found his weapon in Ulysses S. Grant. Grant was aggressive and scored crucial victories. Despite fierce criticism over Grant's high casualty numbers early on, Lincoln protected him, famously stating, "I can't spare this man, he fights." And this brilliantly illustrates the horrific human toll of that war. During Grant's 1864 Overland Campaign, the Union Army suffered roughly 55,000 casualties to the Confederates' 33,000. These numbers are just staggering, and they placed immense, agonizing political pressure on Lincoln's administration to justify the bloodshed. Section 4. The Great Emancipator. This marks the ultimate test of both his moral compass and his political strategy. Early in the war, Lincoln's public priority was exclusively preserving the Union, even if it meant leaving slavery completely intact. He actually went as far as overriding early emancipation orders issued by his own generals. He was terrified that moving too quickly against slavery would cause loyal border states to defect to the Confederacy. But as the war dragged on, Lincoln escalated his strategy in 3 calculated steps. First, he waited for a crucial Union military victory at Antietam so he could act from a position of strength. Second, in 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation to free slaves in rebel states. And finally, knowing the proclamation's limits, he aggressively pressured Congress to pass the 13th Amendment to permanently abolish slavery nationwide. He cemented this massive shift with his incredible skill as a wordsmith. In his 1863 Gettysburg Address, he elevated the conflict from a legal dispute over secession into a profound moral crusade for human equality. By declaring the nation was conceived in liberty, he framed the Union victory as a requirement to guarantee a new birth of freedom. Section 5, Assassination and Mourning. Now we solemnly transition to the abrupt and tragic end of his life, right as the grueling conflict came to a close. The final week of Lincoln's life moved at breakneck speed. On April 9, 1865, Confederate General Lee surrenders at Appomattox. Just 2 days later, Lincoln publicly suggests limited voting rights for black men. This proposal enraged a Confederate sympathizer named John Wilkes Booth. On April 14th, Booth shot Lincoln at Ford's Theater, and he was pronounced dead the very next morning, becoming the first assassinated U.S. president. The national grief was just unprecedented. A funeral train carried his body on a long, 2-week circuitous route back to Illinois, drawing hundreds of thousands of mourners along the tracks. In a matter of days, this horrific assassination instantly elevated him from a polarizing wartime president to a revered national martyr. Section 6. The Lincoln Legacy. Let's shift to how history remembers him today, because his legacy is massive, but also highly complex. Was Lincoln truly the great emancipator? It's a question that really sparks curiosity today. While he's widely revered by the public under this title, modern historical perspectives actually hold much more nuanced views on his political journey. When we look at the historical record, a spectrum of viewpoints emerges. Scholars consistently rank him among the greatest U.S. presidents, and he's revered as a champion of human liberty. Figures like Frederick Douglass praised Lincoln for ignoring his unpopular color. But on the flip side, modern scholars like Lerone Bennett Jr. strongly criticize him for his early delays on emancipation and racist rhetoric. His legacy is fundamentally tied to the complex political and racial realities of his era. So, the crucial point is, despite his complexities, Lincoln's own words about national healing remain enduring. As he stated in his second inaugural address in 1865, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right. He fundamentally sought a just, lasting peace after unimaginable bloodshed. I leave you with this provocative thought. How did a self-taught frontier boy, with less than a year of formal schooling, manage to navigate the greatest crucible in U.S. history and permanently redefine the meaning of American freedom? It is a testament to an intellect that literally changed the world. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring history.